So, welcome everybody. It is the end of January already. I cannot believe it. I'm Jody Pushkin. I'm the manager and curriculum writer for the Tampa Bay Times newspaper and education program. And we have the esteemed and very knowledgeable Fred Hearns with us tonight, who is going to kick off some really interesting information for you so that you will have resources to use in your classrooms for teaching Black history. And Fred, I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, Jody, and good evening, everyone. We are on the eve of Black History Month, as you all know, and February is a very special time, and it's been for a long time. As a matter of fact, this year marks the 100th anniversary of what began as Negro History Week. And I remember when I was in seventh grade, seventh through ninth grade, I was at Booker T. Washington Junior High School. This was back in the early 60s. And at that time, we didn't have what we have now, the system where we had junior high schools. We didn't have middle schools. And junior high school didn't start until seventh grade. And here in Tampa, you had the option when you reached ninth grade, if you were Black in the city of Tampa, of either going to Howard W. Blake High School or George S. Middleton High School. Or you could remain at one of the Black junior high schools, Ernest Everett Just, which was in West Tampa. And the school is still located in the same spot. For the last several years, how it's been a elementary school. Or you could stay at Booker T. Washington in ninth grade, which is what I chose to do, and then go on to either Blake or Middleton High School once you reach 10th grade. If you were in Plant City, uh, Marshall High School was the option for high school students in Plant City. And I don't recall the junior high schools that those students attended before they got to Marshall. But, you know, it was a dual system of education. And this was what existed throughout the South because many years after the Brown decision, which came down in 1954, and I'm sure you're all familiar with that, and then Brown 2 came in 1956, which was supposed to speed up desegregation of the public schools, but it still didn't happen for many years in the Deep South. And to be honest with you, as children during that time period, we were perfectly fine with the system we had because we'd had it for so many years. We began to develop a real love for our schools and for our teachers. And I came out of high school in 1966, so all I ever knew was segregated schools from first grade through 12th grade. And we had no idea of the trauma, and I mean trauma, that desegregation would cause in Hillsborough County in 1971. I don't know any students who were coming out of high school at that time or who still had a few years rather before they would graduate who were eager to leave those Black schools and go into a system they had no familiarity with. Many of us didn't know what to expect, and those students were bused all over Hillsborough County in 1971 if they were still in high school. And when I say all over Hillsborough County, I do mean all over Hillsborough County. At Middleton High School in East Tampa, those students who were not graduating seniors in 1971 were bused all the way from Brandon High School in Eastern Hillsborough County to Lato High School in Town and Country on the western end of the county. 8 different schools. So those kids who had grown up in historic Belmont Heights or Jackson Heights, some in Ybor City, that's where most of the students live. They became strangers within a few years, even though you may have lived just a block or two away from some of the kids that you knew growing up. You were going to different schools, and there was nothing to prepare them for that. It really was culture shock. Now I know there were some white students who would say the same thing. And there were only a few who attended the previously all Black schools. And when I say a few, I don't mean a few. I mean there were in the hundreds at each school. But the white students were bused into the Black former high schools. And I say former because in 1971, Howard W. Blake High School became a 7th grade center in West Tampa. Middleton High School, the former Middleton High School in 1971, became an 8th and 9th grade center. And so white students were bused into those schools for those years. But for the most part, they attended high school in the neighborhoods where they lived, where they'd been living all along. And there were not that many who had to ride the bus. Now, I've never taught in the public school system in Hillsborough County, so I don't pretend to be an expert in, the wisdom of some of the decisions that were made. I just know that there were problems that manifested themselves at these newly desegregated schools, in particular at Plant High School and Hillsborough High School, which for the first time had a large number of Black students. Now, there had been a few Black students who had matriculated at those 2 campuses prior to 1971, but very few. And they went by choice for the most part. Many of them were athletes. Some of them I knew personally. But the large number of Black students who came from the Blake High School and the Middleton High School environment to Plant and Hillsborough High School found themselves in the middle of a situation that they really did not want to be in. There were fistfights quite frequently. There were problems in the cafeterias and in the hallways. And on some occasions, I know at Hillsborough High School, the Black students walked out of class and gathered over in the stadium, in the football stadium. I actually saw at that time, for part of that period, I was a reporter for the Florida Sentinel Bulletin newspaper. And I went out to Hillsborough on one occasion to interview whoever I could interview and to write a story. And I saw kids being arrested and loaded into vans and escorted to jail from Hillsborough High School, Black kids who had been fighting the white kids. And I didn't see any white kids being arrested, but I'm not saying none were. But I do know that there was a serious problem. And this was not only in Hillsborough County. I'm sure it existed in other places. So one of the things that the school district came up with was the position of human relations specialist. These were, for the most part, Black people. There were a few who were Hispanic, but for the most part, they were Blacks who had taught in the Black schools prior to 1971. And they were hired into these positions as human relations specialists. Some of them had been coaches. Some of them were taken out of the classroom. Some of them were school administrators. I especially remember Barbara Bethel, and she may not have been the first person hired into that position, but in the 80s and 90s, She served as the supervisor of the human relations specialists who were working at these schools. And at that time, I was working for the city of Tampa. I joined the city of Tampa 1975 in the community relations office, and later it became the Department of Community Affairs. And one of the programs that I was responsible for managing as a city employee was the Tampa Hillsborough County Youth Council. The Youth Council pretty much was made up of students who were chosen by the human relations specialists, both Black, white, and Hispanic students. And they met initially for the first few years, once a month. And we would meet at different schools. So these young people had a chance to go to other campuses, some of which they probably had never set foot on, for these meetings. And each school would send 4 to 5 students. So we'd have from 50 to 65 students once a month from different ethnic backgrounds who would meet and talk about things that were important to them. They would lead a lot of these conversations, and they would come up with projects and programs that they would share with students from other schools. And the whole point of it was to find some common ground where these students who had been raised in different environments could come together and create a sense of unity on their campuses as much as possible, not to diminish the things that were important to their culture, but to share, not to suppress those things that they loved, but to share them with others. And what these young people eventually found out is that, they did have some things in common that they had no idea of. Because when you don't know, you just don't know. And exposure can bring about a lot of change. With the youth council, we were able every year to take maybe 50 of those students on a bus up to Tallahassee. This was one of our yearly projects while the legislature was in session. And they would sit in the galleries and they would be introduced by one of our elected officials from Hillsborough County during the House and Senate sessions. They would sit and observe how the legislature works and just listen to some of the meetings from up above. And then we get a chance to visit some of the legislators from Hillsborough County in their offices, take pictures with them. In some occasions, they would join the young people in the cafeteria while we were eating lunch. Depending on how much time we had after we visited the sessions, we might visit Florida A&M University, FSU, and then we would come back home. And then at the following youth council meeting, they talk about what they learned, what their experiences were. Some of them decided to go to school in Tallahassee, one of those universities after, our visit. I think twice we took some students all the way to Washington, D.C. As part of the youth council. But I think the real advantage was just visiting different environments and talking to young people who, some of them may have come from wealthy families. Some of them may have come from families living in public housing. Some of them came from an environment where you were exposed to public libraries, museums, different things that expanded your cultural experiences, while others didn't come from those environments. And, where they had to do their homework, where, there may have been distractions all around that they couldn't really control. But those were some of the best experiences I had as a city employee, meeting and working with those young people. Then we would have awards we would give out at the end of the school year. We'd have a luncheon for them. This program was funded by both Hillsborough County and the city of Tampa. Both the city and the county put funds into the Youth Council program. And it required very little money coming from the students and their parents. We almost eliminated that completely. And that program lasted for some 20 years. As time went by and the friction on the campuses diminished from the first few years, where you had Black and white students, coming a little closer together, and they'd had some years by that time in middle school, which also were desegregated, and the elementary schools were desegregated. So after a few years, when things began to sort of level off, I think maybe some folk felt that the youth council had kind of outlived its real usefulness. And so eventually the program went away. I'm not sure what other duties the Human Rights Council specialists had. I know they had some other responsibilities other than youth council, but that was my involvement with them. And so eventually the meetings went from once a month to once every 3 months. And then the youth council just kind of dissolved and went away, and the funding was used for other purposes. But I really enjoyed that experience. Something else I want to talk about is a book that I had the opportunity to contribute to, written by Dr. Barbara Shercliffe. Dr. Shercliffe, I know after she received her PhD, began teaching at the University of South Florida in the Department of Education. I'm not sure she's still there or not, but a few years ago she was. And the book was titled The Best of That World. And again, it talked about the two worlds that existed in Hillsborough County up until the 70s. And that was the all Black school system, I'll call it, and the all white system. And in her book, she focused on desegregation primarily at the two high schools, Blake and Middleton, that I've already talked about. On the cover of the book, you'll see some Black parents. There may have been a few students in the photo also, but there's a picture of these Black people marching downtown toward the Hillsborough County's courthouse. The old courthouse on Pierce Street is where the school board had their offices in the late 1960s and early 70s. They were not in the current building on Kennedy Boulevard at that time. So these parents and these perhaps some students or some other Black people, but I know there were parents primarily leading this march, and they marched from Blake to the old courthouse to the school board, demanding that the school board keep Blake High School open. And while there were no marches of the students from Middleton, that would have been an extremely long walk from East Tampa, where Middleton High School was located, to the courthouse downtown. But the sentiment was the same. They wanted Middleton High School to remain open. The argument was white students can come to Middleton and not be afraid of any violence or anything detrimental happening to them. And white students can come to Blake High School, and the same thing would be the case there. They would be accepted. This is what the parents were saying. Why do you have to close these two Black high schools as high schools and convert them to a 7th grade center or an 8th and 9th grade center? That was their argument. But the courts had already determined that, desegregation was going to happen. And the Hillsborough County School Board decided that it's going to happen the way we think is best, and that is for Blake to be a 7th grade center and Middleton to be an 8th grade center. And one of the arguments that was made, and I remember this, is that, well, the schools were built too small. The size of the facilities is not appropriate for a senior high school. Now, it had been a high school for many years for the Black students. And many of these students graduated, did well in life. Many of them went on to college, did very well. And they matriculated in these buildings, in these classrooms, in these labs, in all of the facilities there. It served at Middleton as a high school from 1934 until 1971. And no one ever made the argument the classrooms are too small, the cafeteria is too small. They don't have enough facilities in the athletic department. No one made that argument until 1971 when it was time for desegregation. And then the argument was made from the school board. Facilities are too small for a high school. They are more appropriate to be a 7th, 8th, or 9th grade center. And that's what happened. And so, that was a great shock. And it was, again, traumatic for the Black students who had not graduated yet, who still had a year or two more in high school, for their parents. And remember, many of those parents had also gone to the same schools, especially the parents on the east side of town. Middleton had been there since 1934. So most of the parents in East Tampa, I would say, had gone to Middleton High School in the 1930s or 40s or 50s even. And Blake High School only opened in 1956. So it was not as old as Middleton High School was, but prior to Blake High School opening in 1956, a lot of the students who lived on the west side or in Ybor City went to Don Thompson High School, which opened after World War II, around 1945. But Don Thompson only lasted for 11 years. And then 1956, most of those students who had not graduated, but who had attended Don Thompson High School, the Black high school at that time, which was located in Tampa Heights, most of those students who had been at Don Thompson graduated from Blake High School. So those were the schools that made up, and I don't know a lot about the makeup of the communities in Plant City. Marshall High School was actually the first of the three Black high schools in Hillsborough County between Middleton, Blake, and Marshall. Marshall was the first one to move from being a high school to a middle school or 8th or 9th grade center, whatever the case was. But that happened in 1969. So it was 2 years later, 1971, that first Blake parents were notified that your students will not be going to Blake next year. They're either going to be going to Plant or some other school, Robinson or some other school, but they won't be at Blake, not as a high school. They were told first. And as I can recall, several months later, the parents at Middleton High School were told. I think maybe someone considered, if we tell all of these Black parents at the same time on the east side and the west side that we're closing Blake and Middleton, we might have some real serious problems. So Blake parents were informed first, and then months later, Middleton parents were informed. Those high schools are no longer going to exist as high schools. I can stop now, Jody, and I'm sure there's some conversation some folk may want to have or some questions they want to ask, and then we can pick it up from there.
Oops, I was on mute again. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? Fred, can you repeat the title of the book that you were just talking about?
Yes, The Best of That World.
Okay.
the best of that world.
Thank you.
So again, talking about the two worlds, one black, one white, when it comes to public education. And I'm only talking about public education. I haven't mentioned, the private schools and how that was impacted. But of course, Barbara's study was of the public school system, the best of that world. And I believe it was, oh God, I'm trying to remember the year it was published. I should have looked that up before the discussion this evening, but I'm sure if you Google the best of that world, Barbara Shercliffe, you can find the information. And I don't know if it's still in publication or not. That word historically understood from Angie to everyone. Okay, 2011.
That wasn't that long
2011.
ago
Yeah.
in the grand
I thought
scheme
it
of
was,
things.
I actually thought it was published before then. But if that's what she found, then, and the reason I'm saying that is because I was still working with, at the city of Tampa, and I retired in 2007. And I thought it might have come out before then, but we can find it.
Thank you for adding the
Yes.
link, Sue. Sue has added a link in the chat for it.
Okay.
If you have questions, you can, oh, never mind. It says it was 2006. Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds correct.
Okay. We don't want to send people to the wrong book. If you have questions, you can unmute or you can put them in the chat, whatever interests you. I do have one question for you, Fred. Why is this important to teach our students today?
We have to know our history if we want to make intelligent decisions about the future. We don't know the future. We can't predict the future, but we can study human nature and we can study things that happen and figure out the why and the how, because we've got a record of the past, right? We don't have a record of the future, but we have a record of the past. I think it's wise to take a look at how difficult situations were handled. And I know there are always challenges, but many of those challenges are not new. And there is a record of how those challenges were handled in the past. Now, what I haven't talked about yet is the tremendous impact on the Black teachers and the white teachers, the Black administrators and the white administrators, the Black coaches. There was only one principal that I'm aware of who had been a principal at the Black high school, one of the Black high schools, and this was Mr. Sam Horton, who became Dr. Horton, who had been principal at Marshall High School. And he became principal later on at Jefferson High School. He was the only Black principal at that time. The principals at Blake and Middleton were not principals in the new dual system. A.J. Farrell, who had been principal at Middleton for 12 years, retired. He said he refused to go to another school. Well, he didn't say this maybe in so many words, but his position was he was not prepared to accept a subservient position as an assistant principal or dean or whatever at another school, at the previously all-white schools. He was not going to do that after being a high school principal with an excellent record for 12 years, okay? He retired. The principal at Blake High School, Mr. Richard Pride, accepted a position at University of South Florida at USF in their Upward Bound program. And so those two principals were no longer principals. The head coaches, football and basketball, okay, what happened to them? Well, they became assistant coaches, or they coached other sports at the previously all-white schools. And so, as you look at the impact upon them, I mean, it was traumatic for them also. But, it was kind of like a complete defeat. Like the students felt defeated, the faculty and staff, they were sort of defeated because they had to move from where they were, or they could remain in the physical buildings where they had worked, but they then would be working at middle schools with seventh grade kids or eighth and ninth grade kids. One exception, one person who did that was the former band director at Middleton High School, and he was my favorite of all the teachers I had in my 12 years of public education in Hillsborough County. He was my favorite of all, and that was Michael A. Rodriguez, who was the band director at Middleton. And we called him Prof. That was his nickname for his band students. And Prof said to us, he would rather stay at Middleton, even though it became an eighth and ninth grade center after 1971, and work with those kids and be the band director at Middleton Middle School than to go to a high school and be somebody's assistant. That just didn't make any sense to him. But those were hard decisions that those folk had to make. And here's one other thing I'll say. I know I'm kind of getting off the question about why is history important, but our teachers could not go to white universities to get advanced degrees when they were coming out of their colleges. Most of them went to Florida A&M University or Bethune-Cookman College or some of the black schools, black colleges and universities in other states, most of them in the South. But a lot of them got their advanced degrees, their master's degrees at Ohio State, University of Michigan, Michigan State, Indiana University, so forth and so on. Why? Because the state of Florida refused to allow them to attend universities, public universities in Florida. So they had to go north to get their advanced degrees. And it's my understanding that their tuition was greatly decreased because that's the only choice they had. They didn't have a choice to go to University of Florida, public school in the state of Florida, but it was not, the doors were not open until blacks until the 1960s. And there were lawsuits and there were all kind of challenges in Florida and other parts of the South. So they were, in other words, they were very well educated and they were experts in their fields. Most of them were overqualified to teach in public schools, but because major corporations had also closed their doors to blacks, so there were not a lot of other opportunities other than in education. I mean, unless you were extremely exceptional. And so most blacks who taught school during that time, during the 50s, 60s, if they got a master's degree, they got it up north somewhere until the public schools, University of Florida and other public universities in the South began accepting blacks for those studies. But this was it was not accepted with a smile, so to speak. But these were the cards that black people were dealt at that time. So, but I think it's important to learn this history because some of these things we're beginning to see today. The forms may be different and the terminology may be different, but some of the same motives that move people to classify blacks as being inferior and that there's no value in learning our history. I'm hearing that frequently. What's the value in learning black history? Well, it's just as important as any other history. History is history. It's a record of what has happened. And then if we look at those patterns, and we study how these things came about and why they came about, again, it will help you to look into the future. And you can say, that sounds like what happened back in 1926. Or that sounds like something that happened, in 1954 when the schools were desegregated in the courts, but not in actuality until in Tampa, what, 16 or 17 years later, 1954 to 1971. That's how long it took for the Brown decision to be implemented in reality. And finally, the federal court said enough is enough. 1971, this is it. If you want to continue to receive federal dollars, you're going to follow the federal mandate and desegregate schools in Hillsborough County. So we need to know this history.
So, Brad, we have an interesting question in the chat, which I don't think is off topic. But she is asking if how important do you feel it is to introduce the current Black influencers in 2026? I struggle with students being able to relate or even begin to wrap their head around the concept of how it was back then.
Wow. Well, I know it sounds almost like fiction to a lot of young people when we talk about, well, we had to sit in the back of the bus and we could go downtown and you could buy a soda in Woolworth or Crest or some of the other department stores, Grants, but you couldn't sit down and drink it. You had to keep moving, or they'd give you your drink in a plastic cup or a paper cup. You couldn't sit down and enjoy yourself like white people were able to do. But that was real. That was the way it was. Or you couldn't go downtown and try on a jacket that you saw in the window that you thought you might like. Try it on, walk around, look in the mirror. We do this all the time now. But then decide, well, I don't know. I don't think I like it that much, or maybe the price tag is a little too steep for me. And then you put it back up on the hanger. No, if you put it on, it was yours. You were not able to go in and try on shoes and clothes and hats and so forth and decide you don't want them and they go back on the rack. Uh, I don't remember that happening. We pretty much had to know our size. And if you were allowed to, and usually there was a clerk who would, not allow you to just try on clothes like we do today. If you were Black, if you had to use the restroom, you're downtown for a couple of hours and maybe you need to relieve yourself. In many of these stores, you were out of luck. You'd have to leave the store and go somewhere else. But you know what that did? That drove us even closer to Central Avenue, which was the Black business district. I touched my screen. Can you all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. Yeah, that drove us closer to Central Avenue, and that was even more incentive for Black entrepreneurs to open up their own businesses. So you could buy almost everything you needed except maybe a house or a car on Central Avenue. And even on Central Avenue, you could make a connection to somebody who would sell you a car or build you a house. So we had our own little world where we could get almost everything we needed without having to suffer the humiliation, okay, of being put in a corner, have restrictions put on you. And you would always say in the back of your mind, things are going to change. My children are not going to be humiliated like this. They're not going to have to grow up in a world where they're told, you don't qualify, you're not good enough, you're not welcome, you're not wanted, you're not respected, you're not important enough. I mean, we were told that every day in different ways. But let me tell you a little secret why I had so much confidence coming out of high school that I could go anywhere and do anything. There were times when a whole week would go by, I would not see a white face. my whole world really was a Black world. I mean, if you think about it, if you live near your school, which I did when I was in high school, I lived 2 blocks away from Middleton, and there were no white teachers at Middleton. Until my senior year, we had one, Tom Harris, and he had come from Chicago, where he taught in an integrated school system, and he was comfortable around Black students. And after a while, you forgot he was white. He blended right in with us. Uh, but you could go a whole week if all you did was went home and went to school, and if you lived in a Black neighborhood, you wouldn't see white people. So you built up this self confidence that I am as good as anybody walking on the earth, and I can do whatever they can do. I can do. We were told every day, be the best you can be. Be ready, be prepared. Work hard. You're going to need to work hard. You're going to need to be the best if you want to get ahead in the world. And when you're told that every day by all of your teachers, and you're able to experience the best things that world had to offer, by the time I got to USF as a freshman in 1966, and there were only like 25 or 30 full-time Black students. You can imagine that at USF in 1966, just a handful. But I had so much confidence that, it didn't matter. I knew I could do what I needed to do, and I knew I could keep up with my classmates. And in some cases, I could do things better than some of them could do. So I think that having those teachers who had so much formal training and who had been segregated against all their lives, so they knew how to deal with it. And they passed that on to us. And we were mighty when we came out of those schools. I don't see as much of that today. I see a lot of it, but I also see a lot of kids who uh, don't have that same determination and that same strength and that same confidence that most of the Black kids had during the days of segregation. So we gained a lot, but we lost a lot also. So I'll pause. I don't know if I answered the question, but I'm speaking from the heart this evening, so I may get off track a little bit. So please forgive me.
Getting off track is fine.
Grit
Um,
is what I call that. I saw that comment.
yes.
Somebody called it grit. Yeah, exactly.
Are there any other questions? Fred, do you want to tell us a little bit about travails and triumphs?
Absolutely. Thank you. So for the last 5 years, I've been working as the Black History curator at the Tampa Bay History Center. After my 32-year career with the city, I retired, but I had a vision that I wanted to do tours, history tours, Black history tours. And so for a while, I did them with a bus, and I still do bus tours from time to time for family reunions. People are having class reunions and so forth, and they want to know more about Tampa's Black history, maybe go see some of the areas that they grew up in when they were younger. So I started doing bus tours and then walking tours in the oldest Black neighborhoods, previously all Black neighborhoods in Tampa. So I did that for 13 years. And at the end of those 13 years, I went back to, well, during that time, I went back to grad school at USF. I got a master's in Africana Studies. And then I also went to Springfield College and got a master's in Human Services. And then the Tampa Bay History Center called me 5 years ago and invited me to come and join the staff and to just keep doing what I've been doing, except do it under the framework of the Tampa Bay History Center. And so Travails and Triumphs, the idea had already been launched when I joined the staff at the History Center, but I was able to contribute artifacts to the collection from my experiences and from people who I knew, especially during the era of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And so Travails and Triumphs, a brief look at life for Black people in Hillsborough County. The initial display goes back to the late 1400s, when the first enslaved people were brought to this area of the country, to Florida. 1528 is the first written record we have of Black people landing here in Tampa Bay on those ships. And most of them were brought here by the Spaniards, who were, exploring the area for gold and for whatever resources they might be able to find. And a Black man from West Africa, many of the records say Morocco. We don't really know if he was born and grew up in Morocco, but that's where he was living at the time that he and his owner, because he was enslaved, when they boarded a ship that landed here in Tampa Bay, 1528, Mustafa was his name. And a place known as Azamore is where he was said to be from. But the name that he was given, the Spanish name that he was given by his owner and the men he came to Tampa Bay with, was Estevanico. We know a lot about Estevanico because one of the Spaniards kept a diary, and he wrote a lot about Estevanico the Black. Estevanico became the guide for some of those men who landed here in Tampa Bay, because the Native Americans who had been here for many, many years were here when they got here. Some of them were hostile toward the Spaniards. Some were not as hostile. The ones who were not as hostile, Estevanico or Mustafa was able to communicate with them, even though he had not grown up speaking their language. But I believe because he was dark skinned, and we don't know exactly what color the Native Americans who lived here at that time were, but we know that they had some kind of texture to their skin, perhaps similar to his. So they were able to communicate, and he eventually learned how to speak some of their language. So he became the interpreter and the guide, this Black man, this African who'd never been here before. 1528. You can read a lot about him, again known as Estevanico, but Mustafa was his African name that he was given in West Africa. 1528, for the next 7 years, he was here in what we know as the United States. And he and some of the men who survived traveled all the way from Tampa Bay, all the way down into Mexico, and then up into California. I mean, he lived an unbelievable life for the next 7 years here. And then eventually he returned to Africa and to Spain also. So the story begins with him in Travails and Triumphs. Most of it most of the artifacts that we have on display are from the 1900s. They were easier to acquire, let me put it like that. But we know a lot of the stories during the interim years, and we have a lot from the 1960s dealing with segregated life in Tampa, the Black Hospital, the Clare Fry Memorial Hospital. We actually have a book that has the names of hundreds of patients, when they were admitted, when they were discharged, what they were treated for. We have high school jackets from Blake and Middleton, those schools I talked about. We also have a photo and some personal items from a man who was said to be one of Tampa's first Black millionaires, Mr. Lee Davis. And there's a health clinic in East Tampa named for him. And so we also have things like names of some of the people who were buried at the Zion Cemetery which opened in 1901 in Tampa Heights. And Zion Cemetery was in the news quite a bit about 4 or 5 years ago when it was discovered that hundreds of bodies, perhaps as many as 700 bodies, are buried there. And on top of these bodies, construction of houses took place and of a public housing development known as Central Park Village, built in 1954. And you had people living on top of these graves for many, many years. Graves are still there. Some of the buildings are still standing. Although the Tampa Housing Authority has fenced the area off, they're preparing to tear down all of those buildings. They will build a new public housing development. They will not be built on top of the graves, however. They will be built next to the area where we know ground penetrating radar has shown us that there are anomalies, and that 99% of the anomalies are in fact grave sites. So Travails and Triumphs has again, just like the title implies, travails, problems, issues, things that happen that should not have happened to anybody, atrocities, including lynchings. We have a vase with some soil in it taken from the Hillsborough County banks. And it was on the Hillsborough County banks up in what is now Temple Terrace, where the river crosses 56th Street, up in that area where a Black man was lynched in 1934. That was the last documented lynching that we have in Hillsborough County. There were 5 that were documented, and that was the latest one, 1934. There could have been many, many more that were not documented. And in some cases, if people disappeared, folk would say, well, they just ran away, they left the area. But in fact, we don't know whether they were lynched or not. But we know that there were 5 lynchings in Hillsborough County. And that is, there's a similar vase that was placed in the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, Alabama. And I want to encourage all of the teachers who hear this or hear of this podcast. If you get an opportunity to go to Montgomery, Alabama, I encourage you to go to Montgomery and visit the Legacy Museum. It is unbelievable. It's a whole square block of history, not just of Alabama, but it tells the story of Black people from the time they arrived here up to not very long ago. And it's incredible. If you've been to Washington, D.C., to the National African American Museum of Culture and History, the museum in Montgomery is comparable to that. And I know that sounds like I'm saying a lot, but it really is. And so I encourage people to visit that museum. So Travails and Triumphs is much smaller, much, much smaller, but it's very powerful. And the story begins with Mustafa, 1528. It ends with school desegregation in 1971. And we've been talking a lot about that tonight. So all of that is captured in Travails and Triumphs. You can spend 45 minutes there. You can spend 2 hours there. It just depends on how much reading folk are willing to do and how deep they want to dive into this material. There are 5 interactive screens, and you touch the screen and information pops up and you can maneuver around. And so there's a lot to see and learn there. There are murals, life-size murals. Folk like to take photographs, and photos are allowed, not flash photography, but photos are allowed inside the Travails and Triumphs area. And the Tampa Bay History Center is open 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 5. So we'd love to have you come. If I know that a small group is coming, if I know in advance, I'll try to arrange to be there and take you through Travails and Triumphs.
Some people might be taking you up on that, Fred. That sounds great. A personal tour. Does anybody have any more questions for Fred?
There's one question in the chat, Jody.
Sorry, I have lost my chat window. Let's see if I can find it again. I don't know what I did, but I lost my chat window. Um, hmm. I don't know where it went. Sue, can you tell us what the question was?
Yes, we're asking what ages do we suggest for visiting the museum?
Thank you, Sue. And now I found my chat again.
Yeah. I would say, it's open to anyone, but I think that the children who get the most out of it are maybe from fourth grade up. Uh, their reading and their comprehension is a little more advanced than the real young ones. But it's there's something there for everybody. I think the thing that catches the eye of a lot of the younger kids, we have a rifle from 1856. That's, I think, the oldest artifact we have in Travails and Triumphs. And of course, that catches their attention. When we were doing police community relations workshops, I did those for over 20 years with the city of Tampa. And guns, weapons were sometimes the first thing that those kids were attracted to, and they're curious about them. They've seen them on television and in the movies, and everywhere they look now, they see guns. And many of them, while they've never handled a gun, to see one up close behind a glass case, it's kind of fascinating to them. But uh, what I also do for the older students is I kind of challenge them, and I want them to talk to me. I don't want them to let me talk during the whole tour, which I could do. I don't mind talking about this history, but I have a picture that I'll pull up from 1482, 1482. And I'll pull it up and it shows some Africans who are newly arrived in the New World. And some of their owners and some of the whites who came over from Europe with them are standing in the background. But there are maybe 60 or 70 Africans, and most of them are children. And I pull that picture up and I'll ask them to look into the faces of those Africans and tell me what you think they're feeling. What do you think they're thinking now? What's on their minds? Give me a word or two to describe what their expressions tell you. And I get a lot of different comments. They look hungry. They're skinny, because most of them, you can see their ribs in this drawing. They're scared. They don't know what's going to happen next. They're frightened. I get a lot of different responses. But I hardly ever hear anyone say the thing that I bring up, which is they are determined. They're going to live. They're going to make it. I see strength, because when you have survived being captured in Africa, survived the Middle Passage, survived everything that they have gone through, and yet you made it to America. And even though you have no idea what lies ahead, but and the artist, in whose name I don't recall right now, but I think they did a wonderful job of uh, putting those expressions on their faces of determination and strength. And I said, that's what I see. I see strength. And once I make that comment, then they kind of say, well, yeah, I see some strength too. So, I engage them and I want them to talk back to me. So I don't take it for granted that, children, even though they may be 5, 6, 7 years old, there's some things they do understand. They can look at a picture and they can tell you what they see and what they think is going through that person's mind. And then when you make some suggestions to them, consider some other things, then they begin to do that. And so I just love it. The kids also, like, one of the things we do, we take them up to the fourth floor. Travails and Triumphs is on the third floor. We have 4 floors at the History Center, and second, third, and fourth floor are where the exhibits are. I take them on the fourth floor to the area we call the Crow's Nest, and you can look down over the port, and you can see the cruise ships, and you can see, the Garrison Channel and Harbor Island. You can see a lot from the fourth floor, from the observation deck we call the Crow's Nest. They just love that. And I love taking them up there too. It's a view you don't often get of the Channel Side District. So it's a good experience. We want them to see some of the heartaches and pains that Black folk have endured, but then also there are triumphs. So, we have an area where we can look at the first Black state representative, the first Black senator, Doug Williams is represented in the display, first Black quarterback to win a Super Bowl, and he started his career right here in Tampa. There are a lot of good stories. We end the tour with these life-size murals of the first year at Blake High School in a classroom, and some ladies at the Apollo Ballroom on Central Avenue from 1941, and some students, female students at Middleton High School, 1952, who I believe were Miss Middleton, Miss Junior, Miss Sophomore, Miss Freshman, beautifully dressed. And then one of the last images is a parade on Central Avenue. And we loved our parades. I played in the band from 7th grade through 12th, and we lived for parades. And it didn't matter that we were not invited to the Gasparilla Parade. We had our parades on Central Avenue when Bethune-Cookman College came to Tampa to play a football game, or on Easter. Trust me, Easter was a big deal in Tampa during the days of segregation. In some cases, as big as, if not bigger than Christmas, because everybody always got a new outfit on Easter, and you got to go to MacArthur's studio and have your picture taken on Easter in your new outfit, and you got to go to Easter egg hunts and see the Easter Bunny and the big parade on Central Avenue. Easter was a big deal in Tampa during that time. So you can experience all of that in Travails and Triumphs. And so I think it's a good balance of emotions that you'll experience there.
Thank you so much, Fred. You have such wonderful information to share. And the History Museum is a great place to take students. I was impressed with all the artifacts and stuff. And it's also actually a good way to show some of the people who still live in our community who donated some of those artifacts so that students can relate to that.
Exactly. Well, school board member Henry Shake Washington, who graduated from Middleton High School in 1968, he donated his class ring to Travails and Triumphs. And I thank him for that every time I see him. We're good friends. And I said, man, first of all, most of us have no idea where our class ring is, our high school class ring. But for you to donate your class ring, man, that shows how much you really love this history and how important you think it is for young people to feel a part of it. We also had Leroy Long, who taught in the public school system, I think for like 30 years in Hillsborough County. For many years, he was the boys basketball coach at Hillsborough High School. Coming out of Blake High School, he was the top tennis player we probably ever produced in Tampa. He went to Florida A&M University on a tennis scholarship. Had he not been Black, there's no telling how far Leroy could have gone. But, he came out of college in the late 1960s. And again, most white colleges were barely accepting Black students. And so for him to become a pro tennis player He was not as good as Arthur Ashe. So, but he played in college and he was excellent. He donated his high school jacket with a letter on it, the B for Blake, with the tennis racket, a picture of a tennis racket on the jacket. So we have some people who've given some very precious personal things to us. We are still collecting artifacts because in mid 2027, we'll be opening Tampa's Black History Museum. Tampa's never had a Black History Museum. We've had an African American art museum back in the 1990s, but never a Black History Museum. But the Tampa Housing Authority has purchased a historic church on Central Avenue, 1213 North Central Avenue, the old St. James Episcopal Church. The Tampa Bay History Center partnered with the Housing Authority a few years ago, and we've been running programs out of that building for the last 2 years in preparation for the building to be converted to a Black History Museum. We have a Black History Book Club that meets there the last Monday every other month. Our next meeting is Monday, February 23rd at 5:30 p.m. And just a few days later, on February 27th, that Friday, we're having our 5th annual Black History Month reception. And tickets for the reception are on our website, tampabayhistorycenter.org. The book club information is also on the website. We're doing walking tours now. Every month, we do a Black History walking tour. You register for those on the website. And so we've got a lot going on. And, this is our very, very busy time of year between Martin Luther King's birthday and the end of February, Black History Month. But we do Black History 12 months a year at the History Center. And I'm available for opportunities to go out to schools, churches, other venues and talk about, our history, what we offer at the History Center, and also, local Black history that may not be as well represented because we can only put so much in the museum. But that's why the walking tours are so important.
Thank you so much, Fred. We really appreciate your time. We're gonna switch things up just a little bit to make sure that I can give you all the resource information I have at the end. So instead of me doing that now, I'm actually going to introduce another guest that we have. We have the esteemed Dr. Hawkins, who teaches at I'm going to say it wrong, Hillsborough College. I'm so used to saying Hillsborough Community College, but before he speaks, I just want to remind you, if your name is not, if you do not have your first and last name listed with your sign-in, if you could please put in the chat your name so that I can make sure that we have attendance for certificates of completion. There's also a couple of names that I'm not recognizing at all. So if somebody forwarded you the Zoom link instead of you registering, just go ahead and you can either just send me personally your email address in the chat, or you can post it just so that I'm able to communicate with you afterwards.
Jody.
Yes.
Real quick, and I'm eager to hear what Dr. Hawkins has to say. I really enjoy him sharing his knowledge with us. I did see a question in the chat about Yolanda King. I actually met Yolanda King here in Tampa several years ago. She's been gone for quite a while, but we actually took a photo together, and I cherish that photo. We had no idea, I think maybe 5 or 6 years later, that we would lose her at such a young age. But she spoke at Tampa Theater, and I actually introduced her, and someone snapped a photo and they gave it to me, and I still have that picture. But I don't have a lot of information about her that most of us don't already know, but she was a sweet person and a great loss, Dr. King's oldest daughter.
Thank you very much. We are going to throw you to the wolves, Dr. Hawkins.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Lauren was laughing when you said esteemed. Lauren, I am esteemed. I just want you. I just, I just want you to know she's like esteemed, but
It was
yeah,
out of love. I
you
promise
said
it
it
was out
right,
of love.
Lauren. Yep. So, but for the, I need to ask you one question, Ms. Pushkin. First of all, thank you for having me, and thank you, Mr. Hearns, for suggesting that I should be here. So I appreciate both of you all. But I have students who signed in. Are they going to get certificates? Because I didn't know anything about this. I was like, oh.
So what we usually do is we give certificates of completion to teachers so that they can get professional development points, but I
Good,
can
okay.
certainly include your students as well.
Wowzers! Look
If
at
they,
that. I
so
don't know
if
where
they
they would
want
use
to
it,
put
but
their information, I see a couple of them. I see a couple of Hawk Mail
look at
emails
that.
in
Okay,
the
that's
chat,
amazing. They came on just to hang
just to
out, but
help you.
okay, cool.
Okay.
So I'm going to present this today with two students of mine, Lauren Gay, as I just mentioned, and then Bella Vanderplug. Please, Bella, correct me if I misspoke your name.
Nope, you did good.
Good. They're two students, former students. They're Lauren's at USF and Bella's at Hillsborough College. Is that right, Bella? Bella was a high school student taking my class at Hillsborough College, and Lauren was a full-time Hillsborough College student. They both earned A's, obviously, but they stood out in the class. And I teach African American Lit. That's why I'm here today. So, but the class really serves as like a mixture of African American Lit and African American Studies. Really, kind of all African American Lit are sort of African American Studies, if you're being real with it. So, because we do so many different things, and all those classes are about the same. Fortunately, I've been able to continue to teach this class. I'm not sure how much longer I'll be able to teach the class. I'm trying to stay under the radar. I'm not sure if this is going to hurt me by being out here today, but we're going to do it anyway. So so today, because I wanted my students to come on and talk, to give their responses to some of the things that of what I did in the classroom, so you all could get a sense of how students took it, right? How they received it. Because I think as teachers, you might want to see, how the students see what I'm teaching, so you can get a sense of how you might teach it. So for my class, I did several different things. I kind of started them off with with podcast, and Ms. Pushkin, this is high school teachers and some middle school teachers. Is that right?
We have a hand, not sure everybody who's here, but we have mostly middle school and high school, and we have a couple of elementary.
Okay. So, and I have something for elementary teachers too. So if you're an element, I have something for you. But we kind of started off slowly, but it goes by fast, right? Because we talk about race and what is race and how does that look. And we do podcasts that talk about the history of race and discrimination, and that really helps students because they're just talking through it. They're just giving some, you talked about first sources. So it was like mostly interviews, some factual reports, historical reports, and we did one podcast, Seeing White. You can look that up, Seeing White. That was really good. The other one was 1619 Project. I'm not sure you can do 1619 Project because it's banned. But you can do Seeing White because no one ever, I think Seeing White is worse than, for me, I think it's more critical than 1619 Project. But Seeing White is incredible. So maybe you guys can do that in high school and middle school. It's a real good, they have interviews and they give some historical references and they like pull things together about how we got here in the first place in terms of slavery and then after slavery. So that gave students a real good nonfiction, factual sense of where we are today in terms of African Americans and enslavement. So Lauren and Bella, Lauren, I don't know if both of you guys experienced 1619 and Seeing White, but I know that both of them experienced one of them. What was your response to that? Do you think that they were effective? Do you think they were too shocking? How did you see those podcasts? Lauren, well, let's go with Bella because I think she's a year younger than you. Lauren, you're an old woman. So what do you got, Bella?
For me, I didn't feel like shocked with the information. It was easy to consume in the way of the explanation process. So like, even though it was shocking information to absorb, the way it was being given wasn't like in a way of trying to paint a bad picture on like us as white people, but more of just accurate of how things happened and how we can grow from them.
Good.
Is my opinion on it, at least.
That's good. So you say that it didn't seem accusatory, just factual, just
Exactly.
Good. Lauren, what was your Bella? Which one did you guys hear? 1619 or?
I got both when
You
I
got
took the
Okay.
course.
Good. Okay, Lauren, what was your perspective on those podcasts? Or
I definitely agree with Bella, but another thing that I liked about starting off with the modern podcast was that it gave me the framework to understand the historical stuff we were going to go into. Because in this class, we went over, the history of how certain things came to fruition, but not exactly why, just the chronological order. The podcast helped me understand that, hey, the reason why these books by these Black artists and these true stories by them are so important was because we didn't get to hear or ever get to read most of them. It was so rare for these things to get published that it made me know so much more that like I need to take it very, very seriously. These are treasures to have, these historical things that even though it's, especially for me, it would be hard to understand that how they happen or how long it went on or the trauma that came out of it, it made me realize how important it was.
oh, that's really good. Thank you, Lauren. And I'm going to stop here to ask if there's a question. One, I can answer one question at a time before I move on to the next thing. But the key thing here, I want you to see, these two students, two things are stellar. They're super, and I'm not saying that to make them feel good. I'm telling you, just they're going to win at everything that they do. They performed superiorly in my class. They showed up. They participated, they were involved. Their lives were changed. We're still friends today. Now, I would tell you that most of my students are not Black. So when you see them, you need to know that they're sort of representative of most of my students in my class. My class is an elective class. I do have some Black students. I do not begrudge them for not taking my class. Because many Black students don't want to hear it because they already hear it. They already have heard it. Some of it is traumatic for them. It's like, gosh. And then a lot of times they're sitting in that class, they're hoping, because like when I was in middle school, we would talk about slavery and everyone would look at me like, you poor guy. So sometimes they don't want to be, singled out. So a lot of those ideas come back to play when you're thinking about taking an African American studies class. Now, I do have some Black students, and they like it too. They're engaged. I was thinking about one, but I couldn't get her to come on tonight. So I do have some Black students, but primarily it's Hispanic or white students that I have. And mostly it's female, by the way. I'm not sure that that's a big deal, but if you look around the class by gender, it's mostly female who take my class. So I just want to give you an impression as teachers, who might take your class if you have an elective, and that don't be surprised if many of them are not Black students. I think my Black students were learning at the same rate as anybody else too. I mean, this was new information for many students, no matter where you come from or what color your skin is. Okay, so do I have a question there, Ms. Pushkin?
I don't see any questions.
That's fine. We certainly can move on.
Is the podcast that you're talking about, is it available for teachers to any teacher to use? And where would they find it?
But you just Google Seeing White. Cannot
Okay.
remember that guy's name. It's Seeing White. It's produced by a PBS station out of North Carolina,
Okay.
but it's called Seeing White, and it's a podcast with like 8 episodes. And the other one is the 1619 Project. You can Google that too. That's free. Both of them are free when you go online. So yeah, that's really interesting, Miss Bays. But yeah, those are 2 good podcasts to start off with, just to get them a sense. I always try when I do this class, it's better if we talk about what are we looking at before we start reading the material. And then
And
that
there
way it
are
gives them
now,
time to
there's a couple
test.
of questions. First, what books would you recommend for elementary students?
Okay, so that was the second thing. Now, I don't know if Lauren or Bella read this. If we got to it, it is One Crazy Summer by Rita Williams, Garcia. I did it this first and second year when I was teaching, and I haven't done it since then. But the students love it. The college students, and it's about 3 girls under the age of 13 who go to California, and they're from New York, and they go to visit their mother, who joined the Black Panthers movement, and it talks about their story, and it's a really good story. So it's appropriate for kids because it talks about like these 3 girls who are just trying to learn how to survive in California, visiting their mom. And you learn about their story. But for adults, they get a different perspective. In one of the perspectives that you can get as the adult is this mother trying to find her own way through life as a single mother, as a mother who doesn't want kids. She doesn't say it, but that's one of the things that's suggested. So it's a very much of a womanist perspective, especially if you have a class where you want to do womanist literature. I always try. Most of my literature is womanist, by the way. So for elementary teacher, One Crazy Summer by Rita Williams Garcia is incredible, and she has a part 2 which is pretty good. The part 2 it's a good one. The third one, I read the third one, it's okay, but 1 and 2 are really good. So consider that reading that. And also, I am telling you, that one will fly under the radar. No one will suspect anything from that one, because it doesn't say anything about white people or racism. It just talks about these little girls trying to survive. That's a good question. What's the other one before I move on to the next thing here?
Actually, this is just a comment. Somebody said when she took African American Lit in college, she saw the same demographics that you're mentioning now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. I mean, I don't know. I don't really have any feelings either way. I just, whoever is ready to come to me when they're ready to come, they're ready. So, but I wish that there were more Black students. And the other bigger problem is that I rarely have Black males in my class. That's a real rarity. So a few. And the unfortunate thing, the ones that I can think of that are in my class that were males were incredible students. So I'm often just looking just regular guys, just come to class and see what this is about. Anyway, so that's a good one. I wanted to talk about the plays. We did Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which is you can watch that movie. So that's a play that you can watch. So if you want students to read the play and watch, I like plays because this is an elective and novels are too much to invest in. So I do sort of short readings, and plays are really good. I also like August Wilson. He is my favorite writer, and he does Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And we also do what's the other one by him? It's Fences, right? We do Fences. So and students like Fences and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, both. I would tell you that they are not appropriate for middle school students. I don't think so. Maybe Fences is not really. I don't. Fences deals with some really. It deals with. He cheats on his wife and he has an affair and he has a baby. I don't know if they can do that. Maybe they can do it. Definitely not Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. There's lots of profanity. There's a sense of there's some LGBTQIA scenes there. Speaking of which, I meant to tell you that only once have I had a student have that they had some concerns. I had a student who walked out. Just one time, just one. And she was religious. And so when we came up to Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, the LGBTQ scene that came up, it offended her religious senses. So, and she came back and apologized. So, not that I was looking for that, but I'm just saying that the students accept these things. Well, they may not accept them, but they at least think about what's presented to them, right? So they may not agree, but they think about what's presented, and that's all I want. What's your impression, Lauren and Bella, on either one of those plays? I know that you guys at one of the plays, and do you think that it's appropriate for teachers in high school, middle school, or elementary? I don't know about elementary for either one of those, but what do you guys think? Lauren, what do you got?
I would definitely say that with our current public school system, they probably wouldn't let you play fences in any of those grades, but maybe you could play Ma Rainey's Black Bottom in high school. It's definitely something where it's one of those movies where you got showed it in school as a kid, and they say, "Hey, when the scene comes up, I'm going to tell you guys that I'm going to, fast forward." But I feel like that's something you could get away with because I feel like it is very important to see. It was very extremely insightful.
Good. What about you, Bella?
I completely agree. I think that definitely no for middle school or elementary school. Not that they shouldn't see that, like, be witness to that. Well, I don't know about elementary, but it's just you're not gonna get away with it. But I think the same thing, basically exactly what Lauren said, which is like it's super important. And I think that at least for high school students, even if they don't like accept it fully, it's something that they have to like toss around with themselves, like what they really believe in, because it's a hard thing to deny once you're faced with it. How do you go with something you've thought your whole life when it's being presented to you in such a way?
Yeah, I'm glad she said that because a big deal is that what annoys me the most is that it doesn't really annoy me. It's sort of problematic that when students leave my class, they congratulate me for doing a good job. They say, I love the class. And then many of them say, I'm just like upset that I didn't learn any of this in high school. And that, by the way, that's not a punch at high school students. I know that you guys have to, be careful. I understand that I don't have to like abide by the same rules that you guys have. So, but they need more of this in high school and middle school. So find your source. The plays are a good source. They're written by August Wilson. If you can't do August Wilson, I would tell you, there's some other authors, but as I said, Rita Williams Garcia is incredible, right? And some of the speeches by Dr. King or even Malcolm X, they're great. So if you can't do that, if you want to do nonfiction, and some of you high school students, teachers, or middle school teachers are having students look at sources and write about the sources and do these rhetorical essays, I would tell you many of the speeches by Dr. King and Malcolm X, or especially Dr. King's when I think that he had the speech where he was almost stabbed. I forgot which one that was, but that was incredible. And then Malcolm X's speech about the ballot or the bullet, that was incredible too. So students read that in my class, and I mean, it talks about politics, but I think that if you want nonfiction, you want some rhetorical pieces to study, those are really good. One more thing before if I'm going to open it up to some more questions. We did some short novels like Passing. Passing was really good. There's a movie. I think that students can do that one. The only problem is the end. So, because it suggested that she commits suicide. So I don't know if you can do that either. I don't know. But passing is it's kind of an easy one to me. I think that I mean, it's a serious one in which they're talking about the notion of whiteness and proximity to whiteness. So I think that one may work with you guys. Another one that we read was Just Mercy. That's not a novella, it's a longer piece, but again, there's a movie from that one. Just Mercy was incredible. Mr. Hearns was talking about the museum in Montgomery. The author of Just Mercy is the founder of that museum, the Legacy Museum in Montgomery. That one's it. I don't know if they can read that one, but they should. That's one that they should, and that will help them read better too, because it's a longer book, but that one's really important in terms of talking about racism and discrimination and hate today. That one is a great book. What do you guys think about Just Mercy, and what was the other one? Passing. What are your thoughts, Lauren?
For the class that I was in, the section I was in, we only read Passing. I feel like that's a book that a lot of kids, especially now, since it's been so many years since desegregation, there's so many multicultural, biracial couples, biracial. I myself am a biracial child. I feel like that's something that once they get to high school, they should be able to handle that type of material. And like Dr. Hawkins said, the ending is up in the air, but I think once you get to that age, it's something where the book is so easy to read and it lays the concepts out so well. And it's a very, very short book that's something that a lot of people should read while they're still younger and not, in their 30s and 40s. So I would suggest that for high school.
It's a good book in talking about race as a construct. So that's like right after this podcast, we kind of start talking about that, because once they get race as a construct, then it's really easy to talk about race at that point. Then we can kind of like let the wheels go. But tying race to complexion is a non-thing for us as much, and we're looking at the power struggle between of how race is used. So that's a good example of race as a construct. Bella, what do you think?
For me, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Just Mercy. That was one of the best books I've ever read. It was incredibly hard to read, but it was so good. The writer did an amazing job with all the information put into it. And when I took your course, I was a freshman in high school. It's like 13 or 14.
It's good.
And so I was so young, and I feel like I absorbed it. To be fair, I come from a very like progressive family, so like this was already stuff that I was privy to, I guess. So it wasn't like shocking again, but still, I feel like for high school students, I do think that it's necessary. It's true, it's real, it's not a fiction book. I think it's really important for high school students to read, and I don't see why it should be an issue. I mean, it's hard topics to discuss, yes, but also it's all real. So
That's I'm glad you said. I think that all high school students should read that book. I think that will give them a good starter point. But the other thing is that the state was saying that we need you guys to focus on Western literature, which is not a thing for us because African American lit is Western literature. So we got it in it. But now that's changing too. Now they want to know specifically what you want to teach. So it's going to be tricky for our high school teachers and middle school teachers and even college teachers because now we have to identify singularly what those texts that we're reading and be able to demonstrate that this text is for everybody. It doesn't offend anyone. That's an impossibility. I don't know how to do that. So, but the intent is not to offend, it's to enlighten. really, right? So I had a student in my class, a white male, said, "Hey, I like your course, but I feel guilty." I'm not looking for you to feel guilt. I just want you to be informed, and maybe change the trajectory of how you approach the world. I took a women's studies class. It changed who I am today. Most of my literature today happens to be women based because of that class. So is there guilt? Yeah, sure. But mostly we need you to focus on what you're going to do. Like, how will this impact your future, your learning, and who you are? Guilt is just a passing feeling. So this is more of a class that tells you what is and gives you some ideas about how to think about race and gender and difference. Okay, I'll stop there and I'll ask for any questions here.
Let's see, we have a comment. They want us to teach from the state standards readings, only 2 or 3 of which were published in the 20th century and none are from this century.
Yeah, I don't know how you're going to modify that, but if you can, like I said, if they already have programmed what you're going to read, that's one thing. But if you can kind of suggest some things, those are some things I can tell you that work, and some things that are not really problematic. Like, as I said, One Crazy Summer. Now, we did also do Between the World and Me. Lauren, you did that one, right? I think so. That's by Ta-Nehisi Coates. That's not going to fly in high school, middle school, or elementary. That's a great book too. That talks about police brutality. You know, that's not going to work. But there are some other articles. I would tell you to focus on probably short nonfiction articles. There are many articles that exist today and some are sort of, I would say you can do some things that, just to give you an example, you can do things that are Black facing without talking about Black people if you're concerned about that. So you can do, like, there's an article that came out in the New York Times yesterday that talks about the comparison between Palestine and Minneapolis, right? Because those issues, right, that's a critical issue that faces Blackness, and that it talks about marginalization, discrimination, policing. All of those issues are relevant. So you can find a way around. That's what I'm saying to you. You don't have to talk about Blackness directly. You can still address Blackness or difference or marginalization without talking about Black people directly. You can do that as well, but I'm saying that there are many ways around for you to get to talk about central issues. I would always tell you that, though, the first thing that you need to concern in talking about marginalization is addressing Black people. If you start from that level first and move up, then you're going in the right direction, right? So I don't know if I've helped you guys, but I tried to give you some text, some podcasts, some plays for you guys to consider. You're gonna have to be very creative in how you teach. I mean, it's dangerous for all of us, really. And part of our job, I think, for me as a teacher, is to be a teacher activist. So I risk, a lot. So, but I think what I do is important, and so far I'm good to go. But you never know. The good thing about what I do, though, is I tell students that you either get it in this class or you get it in composition 2, which you have to take. So you're going to get it either way with me. It doesn't matter. So you're going to get it. And some students take me for all, like I think Lauren and Bella took me for all 3. I don't know if Lauren took me for 1, but Bella took me for all 3 classes. And she can tell you that we've read some issues surrounding Black literature in composition 2, a requirement for most students. You're going to get it both ways, because I think students need to hear the voices of Black people, because if I don't do this, I don't know if they'll ever get it. I don't know if they will ever hear the voices of Black people, even if they're well intending. So, but that's it. That's all I want to say. I think I've said a lot. So thank you, Ms. Pushkin. But I'll entertain any questions. But before I entertain any questions, Lauren, Bella, any final thoughts?
Bella can go first.
I guess my only final thought would be that I think that, especially with high school students, there's a way that you can approach things to where it's not as quickly jarring, where it's just slowly introducing them to these other concepts. The issue with middle schoolers is that they're so young. It's even though it's really the best time to try and talk to them, it's also the time that they're the most comfortable in what they've already known, if that makes sense. There's a difficult way to like bridge that gap with them because they're so young that they're still like, no, these are my parents' ideas. They haven't like had that desire to form their own while also still needing to be influenced to these other ideas at that age. So it's really tough. I feel like trying to find a way to bridge with middle school would be the best thing possible and also the most difficult.
Good job. Yeah, I don't know. Middle school would be very difficult. I think elementary, it's easier to do. I think if you read them, that novel in parts, you know, I would tell you that try to make something a game, challenges, Jeopardy. They love Jeopardy, right? So there's that. So I'm not as creative. I just get in there and lecture and we have a talk and class is done. So, but you know, elementary and middle school, you probably want to, and there's a card game that has Black history facts too. I can't remember what that is, but you can Google a card game with Black history facts that students can do and play, and they can learn more about the culture. Lauren, what do you have to say?
One thing I noticed because partially I joined your class because I knew I would like it, but I became even more what's it called, endowed in Black history afterwards. What I realized was that Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, which we heard about in probably since like elementary school, we always heard I Have a Dream or a couple of things that Malcolm X said, but there are so many writings that they have that don't even talk about police brutality, which I know they won't let you talk about in Florida right now. There's so many speeches they gave, so many things that they wrote that I feel like you could fly by with in the classroom. Even Rosa Parks, I know she released some statements too. I feel like it could give you a better sense of how things were or a better sense of Black history without the state saying that it violates it because it was some sort of poetry meant to attack people. I know even the Freedom Riders and Martin Luther King Jr., they released some statements or documents where they spoke too. And I feel like that's something you could probably fly under the radar with and still give students a sense of what things were like back at that time.
Good job, Lauren. Yeah, I think you have to be creative on what you could do and say, but always try to find a way to get them the information. It's how intentional are you? Okay.
Thank you.
What
Thank you
Go
so
ahead.
much. I really appreciate all this information. And folks, I have been taking notes. So I am going to, somebody asked if I will share the links that were posted in the chat. I will share the links and the names of the books that Professor Hawkins just talked about so that you will have all that information. Again, if you did not register under your name or your name is showing differently than it was when you registered, please just pop that in the chat so I know. I think I've got most of you. There's a couple of you out there that I'm not quite sure. I want to, we don't have a lot of time left, but I have quite a few resources I want to share with you dealing with nonfiction and informational text. I do know that one of the things that I just wanted to point out in the chat, I noticed that somebody had written, and now I've lost where it was. Oh, Dawn had written that she's had issues with everything because you can't please everybody. And I completely agree with that. When I taught high school way back in a long, long time ago, I had the same situation where not everybody, I mean, I had parents complain about the scarlet letter. This was back in the 90s. And now that I'm teaching, I'm an adjunct at both St. Leo University and Hillsborough Community College, and I'm running across students who have never heard of James Baldwin or Richard Wright, or I'm trying to think of some of the poetry that we do in class that's but they've never heard of people, and they should be exposed to some of those writers. And if you're looking for nonfiction works, you can always take parts of them, as opposed to, for example, the Letter from Birmingham Jail is an awesome piece of writing, but it's also very, very long. So you could probably take excerpts from that for high school students as well. Yes, I appreciate that comment, Dawn, that you just made, that the students are great, but sometimes it's the parents. So I'm going to share my screen here and go to our website and start with that, because I think most of the information that I have to share, I have too many things up. I think most of the information I have to share is going to be posted here. Can we all see the website? Yes? No, maybe?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So this is the website for the Tampa Bay Times newspaper and education program. For those of you who have been NIE teachers, you are used to seeing this website, but we have some really good resources in different spots. And the first one I'm going to take you to before I talk about our supplements is our monthly topics, which I have finally updated. And if you go to February, you will notice that we have lots and lots of links here for you. Some of these are curriculum supplements that we created at the Times, and then some of them are just extra information that I found that is really interesting and really cool. For example, the Orange County Regional History Center celebrating African American inventors is a really great publication. Florida Memory Project has some really great publications. Thanks to Dr. Hearns, I added, where did I add it? I added the link to the ASALH website, so you can go there and you can find information. Although I do have to tell you, it wasn't working earlier today. It said it was down for maintenance. And there's also some good sources on the public broadcasting. PBS has some really good teacher things as well. So one of the NIE has created, let me go back to our curriculum supplements page. We have created several publications focusing on local Black history, starting with 50 Years of Fair Housing, which Mr. Hearns has an article in that we did a few years ago. And then we also have At the Crossroads of Freedom and Equality, which is a publication that we did that focuses primarily on issues that took place in both Hillsborough and Pinellas counties. And then as I go down further, we also have From the Scrub to the Twist, which not only is a really interesting publication focused in the formerly called the Scrub area in Tampa, but we also have a really cool Spotify list that somebody at the city of Tampa had created that goes through music that was around during the Chitlin circuit back in I'm going to say that was the 1950s. I might be wrong about that, but I think it was the 1950s. And then we have our most recent publication, which we did 2 years ago, for Separate is Not Equal, commemorating the 70th anniversary of Brown versus the Board of Education. And I want to focus on this for a minute because there's so much local information here for those of you. I know that some of you are outside of our area. I think we had a couple of people from Polk County and a couple of people from Manatee County that signed up. But if you click on the link, it will pop up and you can see the publication here. And I'm just going to point out that one of the biggest things that I find that my students are intrigued by is photographs. And because they're on TikTok and they're on Instagram, and that's where they're getting all their information. So the idea that we have lots of photographs in here that are all locally sourced is very important. We also have some clippings from I believe some of them are called the St. Petersburg Times. And then we have some others from Florida as well. We have images this happens to be an image from the Glover School, which was in the Bealsville community. We have a timeline that goes through all I think we started with the end of the we started with the Civil Rights Act and then go to present day. All of the activities have the standards. I know this is a small picture. Let's see if I can make that a little bigger. All of the activities have the Florida standards listed on them. So you can see that they are how you can apply them to your curriculum. Also, just to put this out there, all of the curriculum supplements we put out have to be approved by Hillsborough County Schools before they go into schools. And this was approved by Hillsborough County Schools. These do correlate with the Sunshine State serves my age there, the Florida State standards. Something else I was just going to point out that there are the activities, the going beyond the text activities basically connect the history to what's going on in the world today. We have some Florida change makers that we featured, and then we start with all the interviews. So Mr. Hearns mentioned Shake Washington. I had interviewed him, and this is his story. I spoke to a bunch of people who are from the Tampa Bay area who were either involved in desegregating their schools, which took a lot of guts. And we also, excuse me, there's hissing going on behind me. I also spoke to Chloe Coney, who is a huge force in the community. And one of the things that she said, she actually was part of a very small group of students who helped integrate a middle school because the parents and her parents were kind of freaking out about that at the time because there were only 3 Black students that were going to be attending this middle school. And she said the reason she did it was because of this picture, because of President Kennedy, because when he came to Tampa, she heard him say, ask not what you can do for your country, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And she remembers seeing the motorcade, which of course was shortly before he was assassinated. I also spoke to Ida Booth. And one of the other, I completely skipped Mark Saunders, who grew up in the outside of the St. Augustine area. And Jan Atkins was a white teacher during the desegregation of Boca Ciega High School in St. Petersburg. And all the photos that we have here back up the information. So when you're talking about research and you're talking about sources and you're talking about informational text, going to the original sources was a way that the stories are their stories, their personal experiences, but we made sure that we included photos. And on that note, we also have a teacher guide that has tons of information for you, but I just want to point out a couple of things here. We put cartoons in here, editorial cartoons that can be analyzed. We also have um, several downloadable evaluation sheets for students to go through. And then I don't know that I don't have the newspaper articles on here, but on my my PowerPoint presentation that I don't I will go ahead and post online. I don't have a lot of time to show it to you. We also have newspaper articles, and one of the really interesting things about the newspaper articles, actually, I am going to switch to that just to show you for a minute. If I can find my, oh, I can't find my PowerPoint. Where did it go? Not sure what happens if I hit screen. Let's see what happens. Nope, that is not what I wanted to do. Okay, let's try that one more time. Let me open this up. Go to share. There we go. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to point out about the newspaper articles, there we go.
Don't call. I'll call you.
Can you all see this, what I'm showing? Okay, so this is a photo of the school that I showed you in the publication, the Glover School. This is a picture of what was going on at I believe this is actually from St. Petersburg High School. Yeah, St. Petersburg. And then we also have one of the things I wanted to point out were dates. So one of the things that Fred mentioned earlier was the idea that Brown versus Board happened in 1954. But the schools in the Tampa Bay area did not actually desegregate until the 70s. And one of the things that I found interesting about these were the dates, and it's not going to show them to me right now because that's what I want to show you. So this article is from 1954. This is from 1954. This is, as we start talking more, this is from 1971. This is from 2000. So obviously there were all kinds of there's all kinds of news articles if you want to use informational text and primary sources to teach what was going on in this area. So I realize it's 8 o'clock, but I am just gonna go to the very end here. Whoops, there we go. This is my contact information for those of you who don't have it. I will be sending you an email with the links that Sue graciously posted in the chat and the books that both Dr. Hawkins and Fred Hearns had mentioned. I've taken a whole bunch of notes, so I'm going to put them all together for you so that you have it. I would encourage you to remember that Black history is American history. We also have a publication coming out next week focusing on Florida and the Revolutionary War that we have looked for finding voices of people that have not necessarily been in the textbooks. So we have Native American information about Native Americans, enslaved people, and women. And that will be coming out next week, and I'll probably be sending an email about that shortly. So that was a lot of information in a little bit of time. I hope you all had a great evening. I do have a little survey for you, but I don't exactly know how to launch it. So let's see if it tells me how to do that. Okay, I'm going to, let's see if this works. I'm going to hit launch and see what happens. Let's get a QR code. Okay, it's not, wait, let me go backwards. I've lost all my windows. I lost my Zoom window. Oh, there it is. Okay. Let's see, Zoom. Close, share. There we go. See, you can teach an old dog new tricks. If you would like to, we would love to hear your feedback. If you want more information, please feel free to email me. I am happy to help you. I am happy to pass along the information about the Tampa Bay History Center to you. There's also, I believe, there's a really nice, really good exhibit at the St. Petersburg History Museum as well. So if you have any questions or if you need any more information, please feel free to reach out. I will reach out to you. I will follow up with you. I did tell you that we might be doing a drawing. I will do that offline. And I will also work on getting you certificates of completion. Any final comments or questions? Nope. Okay, well, thank you again for spending this time with us. I know that you guys are very busy. I know that you're very stressed out. I know that you have lots of things going on, and we really appreciate you being here. So thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you. We really enjoyed it.
This is wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And thank you, students, for taking the time to be here. We'd love to hear your feedback. Okay, somewhere I should be able to stop recording. I just don't know where that is. Oh, here we go.